of Economics. We can talk now to Gillian Keegan, who is the Minister for Apprenticeships and Skills. And Gillian, thanks so much for giving us your time this afternoon. What does levelling up mean to you?
Well, for me, it means that recognising fundamentally that there is talent everywhere across the country, but opportunity isn't spread equally. And really what that means is there's many people who either didn't get the opportunity at school in the first place and, don't have the skills that they've needed to get access to great jobs and kind of stuck in less secure work or less well-paid work. But there's also many people who are probably working now who maybe will have to change what they're doing and upskill and reskill during the time that they're in work. So really levelling up is about making sure that the opportunity for the other 50% who don't go to university, that they have really brilliant routes via many different ways, full-time courses, flexible part-time courses, boot camps, apprenticeships, lots of things that we're introducing as part of this lifetime skills guarantee and the lifelong loan entitlement to make sure that people really do have a much more flexible access to skills where they are, so they don't have to move. The FE colleges, we have brilliant FE colleges all over the country. It's about really investing in those and making sure that people have those opportunities close to home.
No, it's interesting you put it that way. I mean, you've framed it very much about skills and apprenticeships and about moving beyond university as the only route out of school into secure employment. Does that mean it's not about the things that we've just been talking about regenerating the economy of post-industrial areas that perhaps have lost the jobs they used to have?
It is. However, when you look at, we have hundreds of thousands of skills shortages today in the economy. Employers in 2019 were saying 24% of my vacancies I cannot fill because of skills gaps. So actually, yes, it is. And we obviously had a lot in the Queen's speech about investing in free ports, investing in life sciences, investing obviously in infrastructure, which will bring a lot of jobs. And of course, we've got investments in the public sector with more police and more nurses, etc. So, a lot of those bring more jobs as well. But if people don't have the skills to access those jobs, then that's actually the problem that we're seeing. In the first couple of weeks as Skills and Apprenticeship Minister before the pandemic, every single business said to me, it's the skills, I need to get the skills, whether they're digital skills, engineering, whether they're horticulture, agriculture. There's so many skills shortages all across our economy. And my fear as well is that as we build back and recover from the pandemic, a lot of those skills shortages are going to be exacerbated globally.
I mean, what is your advice and what is your hope for a young person growing up in Bolsover? Is it that they stay there and work there? Or is it, and we heard from someone in Bolsover earlier saying, well, I wouldn't blame my grandkids for moving out because there are just better opportunities out. Or is it that you want them to move out? You want them to get on their bike, to quote Norman Tebbit, your party chairman back in the 1980s, get on their bike and find a job elsewhere? Because it surely is going to be the case that many of the best jobs are going to be in the bigger cities.
Not necessarily. And I think, earlier on you were talking about how will work change post the pandemic. I mean, there will be some changes in how people work. And, obviously all of us have been working from home, or many of us have been working from home for quite a long time. But actually, more importantly, for the person who's sat in Bolsover right now, like I was sat in a Knowsley Comprehensive School far too long ago, the first thing is to get access to some opportunity. In my case, I left school at 16. I got an apprenticeship. And that apprenticeship, they basically, an employer led my qualifications and my studies from there on, and that was fantastic. And that's why the employer-led part of our system is going to be very important. But the first thing I would say, if you're sat in Bolsover, the first thing is get lots of different interactions with businesses through the new careers hubs that we're introducing. Then consider very carefully whether you want to do A-levels or T-levels, the new technical qualification that would be designed with employers that also include a 9-week work placement. If you then take those
and then work where? In Bolsover? Hope that a job is coming to Bolsover. Don't go looking in, the big cities of the UK, the Manchesters, the Leeds, Liverpools. Don't go looking in those. Try and stay in Bolsover and we'll try and get the jobs to come to you. Is that realistic?
No, I think neither one of what you said is realistic. I mean, clearly there will be, depending on what skills and talents you've got and how you want to take on your career. You know, you may find somewhere that's local, or you may have to go a bit further afield. You know, connectivity was a big important part of the Queen's speech as well, to make sure that it is a bit easier if you're in those towns to connect to places as well. But you know, and obviously a job coming to your front door is not going to happen. But you know, the flexibility that skills give you, if you've got skills people want, then there is much more flexibility and there's much more opportunity. So that's the first thing. And look for the jobs that, you know, maybe you do want to move, maybe you don't, but don't be forced to.
It feels to me as though we've heard about this, as indeed we have about social care, decade after decade. You know, we must put more into skills and lifelong learning. These are kind of phrases that we hear thrown around. Do you ever get frustrated working in government as you do now? That we kind of wander around in circles saying all this stuff, and yet nothing ever seems to change. I mean, things do change, but it never seems to change at the pace at which we hope it will.
I think that's a really good point, because, you know, I've looked at this many times. The first person that did a technical education skills review was in 1884 under William Gladstone.
I don't even quote them all. I mean, we could just been sent through. It's been so many times we've been through all of this. People reinvent the A level in the T level or the NVQ, and we've got some new scheme for the kind of for the vocational training, and then we all just carry on blithely talking about A levels.
No, the T level is new because that's been designed with 250 leading employers. And the apprenticeship standards are new because there's 600 of them. There's almost not a career there's almost every career you can do, from space engineer to accountant to lawyer, via an apprenticeship now.
So this time it's going to work, even though this time we're going to crack it. We're determined to make it work. That's really what you're saying. How will we know it's worked? How will we know it's worked? Give us a way we can rate you, Gillian Keegan, and we can say, yes, she really did turn around 100 years of effort and make a difference. And we can say, no, she really didn't.
More young people doing technical education, more adults coming back to training, whether that's via a boot camp, a full-time course or a part-time course, more adults upskilling via apprenticeships or via
the numbers of older people in this kind of area, and school leavers as well in vocational training.
And people doing boot camps, I mean, they're new, right? So that's a new addition to the skills landscape, which I think will be very popular with adults.
So we will that's at least a accountable kind of measure of output that one can judge you on. Gillian Keegan, can I ask you about voter ID? I mean, there's a lot of worry about asking people to take ID to the polling booth. I mean, obviously, it's very popular with many voters who are amazed you can just rock up, give your name, and then cast a vote. But can I just be clear? Can I take a credit card with me to show the polling station that I am who I say I am? Is that going to do?
I don't think it's been defined yet, but I would imagine it's photo ID.
Photo ID?
Yeah, so it would be a driver license, a passport, or if you don't have either of those, then you can go and get for free something that I think the plan is could be issued by your local authority. So like they issue your card, which comes, that tells you the polling station, etc.
Can I take my vaccine ID out of interest? Because we are getting vaccine passports. Can I take that on my phone?
I'm not sure what that's going to look like yet, but I was just looking myself, and I actually had to show my ID to get a lateral flow test. So, you show your ID to get a parcel from the post office. You show your ID.
But you don't show a photo ID. No, really important here. No, you don't. I've got the list here. You do not have to show a photo ID. A credit card will do, because they assume if I've got the credit card, I mean, if someone's nicked my credit card, Gillian, they're not going to use it to go and vote. There are much better things they can do with it than go down and cast one vote in a constituency of 80,000 people. So a credit card is a pretty good form of ID, just to prove I am who I say I am. It's very difficult for me to make a fake credit card with my name on, and it wouldn't be worth it for a vote. And the post office are willing to accept it. And I don't understand why you wouldn't be willing to accept that for voting, because many more people have credit cards or debit cards or a number of other things, non-photo ID, than have, passport or driving license, which is effectively what you're saying you have to vote.
Well, it doesn't have a photo on, but actually my post office, honestly, I went for a parcel. I had to go back home to get photo ID. They would not accept a credit card in my post office. So I'm pretty sure.
No, I can actually tell you it is not the case. absolutely not the
in my
case.
In my case, it was. So maybe they're implementing it differently. In a supermarket, you need photo ID. To get into a nightclub, if you're a certain age, you need photo ID. To buy certain things, you need photo ID. As I say, to get my lateral flow test, I needed photo ID.
Have you done the research on the number of likely Labour and Conservative voters who already have photo ID and who don't have photo ID? Because people who've done that research think it is clearly going to favour Conservative voters.
I can't see where this is, why people wouldn't want to just basically, when they go, the last stage of the process, right? They've already had to prove who they are. They had to go on the electoral roll. They've had to prove that they are who they are. They live where they are. The last stage of the process, which is just the bit when you actually go, if you haven't used a postal vote, which many people do, you actually physically go to the voting, to the poll booth, and you have to show that you are who you are. I can't see
with a credit card, a debit card, a debit or credit card, like the post office require.
I can't see after all the other processes that you've been through why this would be an issue. I honestly can't. In today's world, I can't tell you how many times, probably once a week, I have to use an ID card, photo ID.
Why don't you have, if you're so keen on ID cards all of a sudden, there was a government that once gave us all ID cards. They had a voluntary scheme for ID cards, and your party came into power and scrapped it. If we're going to have ID cards, let's have ID cards. Just let me buy an ID card that is absolutely, fraud secure, and let me use it for everything.
Yeah, I remember. I was very familiar with that ID, well, not from a government perspective, but from a technology perspective. And actually, the implementation of it was extremely difficult. But that was probably based on the technology then. We have lots of photo ID. We have lots of photo ID, and you have and of course, many young people are very keen to get photo ID because, of course, that means they can get into bars and clubs, etc. So, I honestly, personally have no issue. I think photo ID has become something that is a normal way of life for so many things.
It's great for me. I've got a driving license. I use it all the time as my form of ID. It's just, I feel for those who don't drive and don't have a license.
Well, how do they buy a bottle of wine in the supermarket?
They probably look
even
older
at my
than 18.
age of 53, I've been stopped and asked to show my ID for a bottle of wine in the supermarket.
You're very unlucky. At your post office and your supermarket, I can tell you at my supermarket, they never asked me to prove my age. You obviously look. You look.
I haven't seen your face to face.
You look very young. Gillian Keegan, lovely to talk to you. Thank you so much.